see you, shoulders. I see you.
Pretending it's summer.
Oh, almost. Oh, oh, this is gonna be good. Social wellness.
Right? Oh my
Yes.
goodness. How are you, my friend?
Mm. So grateful for what we talk about and been really intentional about double pouring on that self-care, right? Checking in
Mm-hmm.
on myself and then checking again. What else? What else could I do for Shannon? So I'm good. How are you doing?
Right? Well, I'm really good. I am still savoring this weekend. So I went with, I don't even know if I've told you this because we just jumped on and started working before the
Yeah, we
show.
did. Yeah.
Um,
What
I
happened?
took a group of inner players. I was part of a group of inner players that went over to Selma, Alabama this weekend for the
Right,
60th
please.
Jubilee.
Tell me about your
And
trip. Yes.
oh, so powerful. And of course, as of life, it wasn't what we completely expected.
Okay.
you know.
What happened?
But to set it up for folks, I was going with a group from Interplay Atlanta to go do Interplay at this Jubilee. This was a 3 to 4 day event honoring, celebrating voting rights for Black Americans, but also honoring our foot soldiers and the people that marched for
Mhm,
Bloody Sunday
mhm.
that brought national attention to Selma. And one of our community members in Interplay Atlanta is Charles Al Lingo. He was one of the foot soldiers on the bridge that day. He'll tell you Martin because he was one of the first white men to work for Dr. Martin Luther King. So he doesn't call him Dr. King. He says,
Mm,
Martin told me
mm,
to go over and to organize the white people in Selma. And so there was a white march a day before or 2 days before. And then they were also a part of the Bloody Sunday March. So we got to go over. We were taking Al over, and we got to be at the Foot Soldiers Breakfast Saturday morning, which is the
wow.
local breakfast. It used for
Mm,
years it was $5. Now it's 20 because of the cost of food, but it's where all the locals gather and
mm,
they celebrate the foot soldiers. So some names that you may never hear in the news. And it was so powerful to me. And it was also bittersweet because a lot of these folks are 88, 90, 92. A lot of them are frail. And whew, yeah. And where we are in our country right now and all the
mhm.
work they've put in for 60 years
Mm,
and but also celebrating with them.
yeah. And maybe frail in body, but not in spirit, right?
Not
That's
in
what came
spirit
up.
at all.
Yeah.
Feisty. Can I
Come
tell
on.
you feisty? And really, willing to march, willing to roll across the bridge, willing to
Yeah.
show up and stand up
Mhm,
and be seen and heard and hearing their stories and how powerful their stories were.
mm,
And that, they were told not to march. They
mhm,
marched.
mm,
Bloody Sunday happened. They were told not to march again. They marched all the way to Montgomery. Like it
mm,
was after Bloody Sunday that the march from Selma to Montgomery, which was the actual, those were the events that
mhm,
got voting rights for Black Americans in the United States.
mhm.
And, I think their wisdom is more needed than ever right now. Sammy is my youngest is graduating from college this May, and
Mhm,
she's
mhm.
graduating with a history degree, and she's
Mm,
very much powerful. And she was taking a class last semester on fascism. And I said, okay, we always hear about the oppressors and we hear what happens, but I want to focus on the resistance and
mm,
what worked.
mhm.
And that was my intent going this weekend is to listen to these stories and what worked and to be a part of it. And what worked is what we're all about. Connection and storytelling and singing. And when
Mm,
times got hard, like they're singing, like they're
literally.
they're literally singing like
Come on. Yeah.
and and so that piece and at the breakfast and I got to meet the singers, and that's
Mm,
an acronym, and I'm sorry I don't have it pulled up in front of me for what it
mhm.
stood for.
I'll pull it
But
up.
there I think were 3 of 4 of these singers that are still living. One of the most powerful things at the breakfast that morning was that their songs, right? And the power of the arts and the songs to connect us and keep us inspired and motivated through challenging times. So, yeah, it was powerful. And Joe went with me, and he had never been to Selma, and that was a and us doing interplay in Selma. At we were, I want to give a shout out to Afrier, who is the founder and facilitator at Arts for Humanity by the river. It's right down there by the river, and she was the one that hosted us, and it was powerful, powerful work. And she was doing an art project that we incorporated into the interplay about her prayers for humanity. So she's doing this art installation that she's hoping will travel around. And so we got to be a part of that, and
Beautiful.
it was powerful.
Is
Yeah.
it something that we would share?
We might. I don't think
Let's
it's
talk
ready
about
to
it.
share it. I
Okay.
don't know if it's ready to share yet, but we might. Let me
Maybe help
ask
us
her too.
travel. Yeah, let's
Oh
see.
yeah. I mean, we could
Mhm,
host it in Atlanta.
mhm.
That'd be
And
fun.
I mean, Women Connected in Wisdom sharing it on our social medias at least.
Heck yeah.
Mhm.
Well, and
Let's do
having
that.
women send it in, and because we could probably help with a virtual aspect of it, because I haven't talked to her about that, but I would love that. If we could do some of these prayers for humanity and share with our networks, I love that idea, Shannon. I think that would be powerful.
Thank you so much. It's crazy, Christine, what I've been looking up. So one, I said I would look up the SNCC, right? Because I knew
Hmm.
that I knew what SNCC was, and it's something that I say the same thing, right? What does the acronym stand for? Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, right?
Yep.
So this is one of the questions, or what I think is always a question of the perspective and how somebody's going to move forward with difficult situations, right? Are you going to sing or are you going to fight? And it's seen as if the singers and Martin and Dr. King, right? And the nonviolent students and the nonviolent protests and all these different things picked a certain side. I think that singing is fundamental to staying centered, right? When we talk about heart math, we talk about interplay and joy. I can tell you in all these different kitchens, I'm upset. If I know I need to recenter myself, Imma change the tune, you know what I mean? Imma go to a tune that helps me recentered. I know I have what
Mm,
I need. I know that it's either I'm jamming with Bob Marley and the Wailers, you know what I mean? Or singing a
right.
song from church, or singing a song that, we might play on Women Connected in Wisdom, one of our book calls to get us going. Like, I
Hmm.
go there because I know that I'm in reality safe. It might be a difficult situation, but it'll be okay. And it helps me recenter and refocus on what I have control over, you know. And if it
I love
is
that.
to use your voice to be seen, heard, and understood, like we're talking about today, we can do that too. We can be, we can sing and still be effective. So I'm excited for this conversation, and I'm glad that you
Right.
guys got to go. I'm glad
Oh,
Joe
I
got
am
to go
too.
with you. Yes, Tamara says Bob Marley. Yes, let us know
Hmm.
what's the music that you guys I would love to know, our guests too. Let's talk about what music you go to, but
Right.
I'm so glad you got
Well,
to do
and
that.
And before we do our official intro, I also just
Yeah.
want to say, like, history shows us
Yes.
nonviolent protests are
Mhm.
more effective than
Mhm.
violent protests.
Mhm.
The arc of history shows us that,
Yeah.
and I want to say it's like 2 to 1 or something. Like, it's
Yeah.
a pretty big margin of how
Mhm.
much more effective. And one statistic I saw this week, and one more, I know I just got to say because I'm
No,
like,
it's fine.
I saw this statistic about if 3.5%
Mhm.
of our communities get involved, change happens.
Mm.
That's what history tells us. 3.5%. Like, that's not huge.
Mm.
Yes, gospel music and reggae and
Reggae,
soca.
soca.
Yes.
Yes, Tamara,
Right?
thank you for sharing.
Oh,
And it's crazy that we haven't even done the interview, but I love that. I love that it's not a lot, and I know that different things call for different skill sets, you know. So that's why we love talking at Women Connected in Wisdom about where do you need help, right? Where is that sore spot? Where can we get the resource? And also, where's your strength? Where does it make sense for you to use your voice? Where is it, that you're more effective in working in your purpose, and, are aligned with your life purpose, so that we can, as a tapestry of the community, get to the goals. So
right.
beautiful.
I'm going to link in our show notes about the
Mhm.
Snick Singers, and
Yes.
there's going to be a picture from Wikipedia, and I believe I know it was because I met her. I have a picture of her with me. I'll see if I can put it in the show notes. To
Mm,
the very right, and I'm not sure if her name is in. Let's see, was it Rutha May? I'll have to look, but I'll put a picture. It was so powerful, and it was either Rutha or Bernice. I'll look at my program and see who was
yes.
singing. And I just really, her voice was so powerful. And she had to be in her 80s, right? And her
Mm,
voice was so powerful that the whole mic like did this hum thing. It was like,
wow.
and you felt it in your whole
Oof.
body. And she had to stop and they had to regulate the mic. But
Mm.
that was how much power was coming through. And I know she was based in gospel music, just the way she was singing. It was it was so incredible. And
Yeah.
you see these things on TV, you see
Mm,
them in the news, but having the embodied experience of being there
mhm.
and feeling that vibration in my body, and then the physicality of walking across the bridge,
Yeah.
and walking in the footsteps of giants. And the last thing I'll say before we go to our intro is
Yeah.
what was so powerful to me about this weekend. And we weren't involved in the glitz and glamour. We really were behind the scenes with the fellow with the just the every ordinary day people of Selma
Mhm.
that made this courageous decision to stand up and do this. And I think that was what was so powerful to me is they were everyday, ordinary, most of them students, most of them 17 to 22, and they knew it was important.
Mhm.
And a lot of them have been doing this work for 60 years, being a part of this movement. And while doing their jobs, while doing raising families, while
Right.
and that reminder, right? That sometimes we think we're not enough or not good enough or
Mhm.
why me or who am I or and it's the collective,
Mhm.
right? It's the collective and them. Yeah, it was incredible. I would recommend it
Mm,
to anybody to
mm.
go and participate and meet these legends.
Yeah.
So yeah, we
Mm.
should do our intro, shouldn't we?
Let's do it.
Sati's gonna be like, y'all went on for like 30 minutes
And
before
that's fine, Sachi, leave it in. Leave it
leave
in,
it in,
okay? Yeah.
Sati.
Oh, it's gonna be good, y'all. Hey, y'all. I am Shannon Mitchell, a Black millennial entrepreneur and Amazon bestselling publisher, author, and all-natural product manufacturer. I'm a champion for your natural self-care, sustainable business care, and overall intentional wellness.
Hey y'all, I'm Christine Gautreaux, a white social justice advocate, an international speaker, coach, best-selling author and publisher, and dancing social worker who helps you upgrade your self and community care.
Together, we are a podcast rooted in the 8 dimensions of wellness and the co-founders of Women Connected in Wisdom Community.
And we like to get together every week with special guests for intentional conversations about how to be wise in business, relationships, and wellness. How do we do this?
Mm. And it's so interesting. Like you said, really being connected. We were talking to one of our coffee and chat expert guests that we're gonna have on later this year, earlier today, and she was asking me how I got the experience of asking for help, the way that I navigate, my team logistics and things like that. And it reminded me of having to go specifically and get the information that I need. Hey, Dr. Joe Veazey in the house with the roses, sending you flowers back. Um, and it reminded me of something that I said, right? The other day we were talking about voting. You bringing Selma up reminded me of this. We were talking about voting. I talked about 1919, right? And my mind said, oh, right, but you weren't voting in 1919. Christine was voting in 1919, but me would have been different. You know what I mean? And so, what was that year? Y'all know how hard it was to find this year. It was crazy. Like, you got to really read it because I didn't remember off the top of my head. But even in 1962, right? Depending on the states, that and how they handle it as we see rollouts of different state logistics and things now, like things are different. So 1919 for as a white woman, but in 1962 there was still a question. So if I'm
And
a young
just a little caveat, I'm not
mm,
that old. I was not born
no,
yet.
Not in 1919 when she literally had been voting, right? But if she was alive, it would have been an option. You know what I mean? No, we're not. Mm-mm. We celebrate age, but we're not adding on extra years. No, no, we're not. Um, but yeah, it's just different, and even when you search information and you're trying to find stuff, that's also why I wanted to bring it up. What do you find when you're looking for dimensional wellness
Right,
and when you need something specifically for you? Okay, what works for Christine might not be something that works for me. And where do we find that? How do we use our voices in those situations to be seen, to be heard, understood, and listened to like we're talking about today?
right. I love
Yeah.
it. Yeah, we're talking
Yeah.
about social wellness today, y'all. And let me give y'all our definition that we're working from. Social
Mhm.
wellness is about the ability to nurture ourselves, others, and our relationships with healthy boundaries. It includes balancing the other seven dimensions of wellness and actively participating as an interdependent being in the web of life. I
Mhm.
really feel like my social wellness cup was filled up this weekend. I felt really
Good.
lucky. Yeah,
Good.
really
Good.
lucky.
And I believe that we're meant to be at all the tables in the rooms that we're at and in. So, you're at my table, absolutely. I was at work, so you were able to go, happy for
I was
it.
able to
Yep,
dance on your
absolutely. Yeah.
behalf, my friend, and
Thank you
we
so much.
did. We danced and
Yeah.
we sang and we interplayed, and
Yeah.
it was powerful.
And that's
And
so important with those heavy and weighted topics and
mhm,
things that things that happen and that we go through. What you were talking about with them and their age reminds me of a video I saw about mycelium and how when we as entrepreneurs and people do things, a lot of times it can feel like we're not seeing the result of it, right? But that adds to the network underneath. And if we don't know what mycelium is, I didn't know what it was till one of our Amazon bestselling authors brought it up in the book, but it's mushrooms and like this underground network that they have, like tree roots, right? And so that's what it reminded me of. Absolutely, they're aging, and Women Connected in Wisdom is here. All of the things that our expert guests are doing are here. All of the things that we're doing out in our community is going to continue to ripple. And
mhm,
just like the 1919 comment, a comment that also stands out in my mind is something that I said at your house one day. We're all over there working on some stuff for our businesses. This is years ago, right? Me, you, Tracy, Cecile, and said something about representation and how it wasn't something that I felt either way about, and I realized when I said that I had the privilege to say that, right?
mhm,
Because of everybody who rolled and walked across, because of the people who were
mhm,
bleeding on Bloody Sunday, I can
mhm,
casually say, "Oh, I don't have to worry about it because we've had all these people since then."
mhm.
That wasn't always the case, and so things like that stick in my mind.
And boy, they're trying to roll some of that back.
Mm,
But I want to bring our guest up because I want to
let's
have
do
this
it.
conversation with her because some of the people I met and some of the info
Yes.
I found out, I think she's going to want to have this conversation too. So,
Please,
you want to
please.
read her bio and we'll get her up here?
Okay, y'all, today we are talking to Diane Wyzga. Diane is an adventuring, mountain climbing, backpacking, country trekking, kayaking, book reading, gardening, beekeeping woman who has walked 500 miles across Spain on the Camino de Santiago. Three values are key to her life: adventure, self expression, and justice. Professionally, she is a nurse attorney turned litigation consultant turned story guide. For 30 years, she's helped professionals take their story from a message only they could hear to the publishing world, the courtroom, public speaking platforms, hospitals, and board meetings. Stories that sway juries, built markets, spread ideas, change things. Today, as a principal guide and story consultant at Quarter Moon Story Arts, she helps women become successful origin story creators, how they got from there to here, so they connect with, engage and influence their communities, and engage and influence their communities, yes, to action. This work helps women clarify their ideas and amplify their voices. Our voice is our power. Our story is the expression of our power. She's also the voice behind Stories from Women Who Walk, a long running global podcast with 1,100 episodes on the air. Help us welcome to the stage Diane Wyzga. Hi,
My
Diane.
mother would be proud. Thank you,
As
Shannon and
she should
Christine. It's nice to be
be.
here.
Absolutely.
Welcome, welcome, welcome,
Thank you.
Diane. The first thing
Thank
I want
you.
to say is congratulations on
Mhm.
1,100 episodes.
Right?
It's well,
Yes.
Today
well.
we are at
Yeah, congratulations.
187, and we know how much work that is, my friends. So
Yes, we do.
congrats, congrats, congrats.
Yeah,
Mhm.
thank you. I celebrate 5 years, 5 years, April 1.
Oh, come
Wow.
on. We're right behind you
Yeah.
in our businesses, and that's a huge
Yeah.
accomplishment because
Hmm.
most businesses don't last 5 years, right? So, great job.
Well, you just have to have a firstborn daughter doing them.
Well, that's
Have to
the
keep
The
truth.
going,
truth. The
right?
truth.
I was
That is the
wondering. I'm
truth,
like, am I
Diane.
gonna stop or am I like, what am I gonna do? So, thank you. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
What a
Yes.
time for your work in the world, Diane.
Mhm.
Like, first of all, I want to say thank you
Yes,
because this is a time that women's voices need to be heard. And what really stood out for me in your bio is our voices, our power, and our story is the expression of our power.
It
Mm,
is. It is. And what's important for women to hear, actually, they need to sit in your words like they're going to sit in a hot tub bath and let those words actually get into their bones. Because so often women say, I don't have a story, or which, I call BS on that. Or they say,
me
my
too.
story isn't worth listening to. And I call BS on that as
I
well.
second that. Mhm.
Because there's one you in the world. There's never been a you, and there will never be a you. And that means there's never been your story, and there will never be your story. So either we learn the incredibly significant power of our voices now, or we don't use them. Now doesn't have to be now. I mean, you can do it the day after tomorrow. But the fact of the matter is, we have something to say, and to use our voice. We were given a voice for a reason, to use our voice to express what we have to say. That is the power that it's like that. It's like when the good witch said to what's her face? You've always had the power, my
Dorothy,
dear. Yeah, to
mhm,
Dorothy. I mean,
I
when
got you.
when women get that, you can almost feel those little red shoes clicking together. Like,
mhm.
oh, wow, I didn't know I could do that. Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes, you
Yeah.
can.
Right?
Yep. 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 Yep.
I love that.
Mm. So, when you hear the words seen, heard, understood, and listened to, what comes up for you, Diane?
That's a great question, Shannon. So in the generation I grew up in, which I like to call my time now as Middle Earth age.
Okay.
Middle Earth age. That's what
Okay,
it
tell
is.
us why.
If it works for the hobbits, it'll work for me.
I love the
Um,
hobbits. I don't wanna wear shoes either, but I don't want my feet to look like that, but I'm listening to you.
Middle Earth age. I grew up in a time and a family and a school and a religion that did not allow did not allow children, did not allow women in particular to speak. Our voices were smored. So it's like making a fire at night. The embers are not put out, the fire is not put out, but when your fire is smored, it's quieted down. And so that's how I lived a good part of my life. The voice was smored. And it took a couple things, took a couple things, including age, to blow the embers back into life again and to have a fire. So when I say that we're seen, heard, understood, and listened to, they are integrated, as Christine and you said earlier about we enter our in the web of the world. Those aspects of our life are integrated, and at the same time they are individual. So when we are seen in our power as a human being who happens to be a woman.
Right,
And when we are heard, we have shared our words, whatever those are, with whomever is there to hear them, which is different than being listened to. You can be heard through your ears, you can hear something through your ears, but to pay attention to it, to listen to it, to receive the message, that's different. And oftentimes women are heard and then they are dismissed. So being able to stand in that place that says, I have something to say. I know what I stand for, and I know what I won't stand for. That comes from a place of confidence. And you're not only heard at that time, but you're also listened to. This is a woman who means what she says and says what she means. And when you put that together, then comes the point of understanding. Now I get who you are. Now I get where you're coming from. Now I get fill in the blank. But it all comes from the place of saying, I've got something to say. And it can start out like a small voice, a small story, but it has to start somewhere. And I want to say something because you mentioned it, Shannon, about the wellness and the boundaries on ourselves. We're not being asked to push the river, and we're not being asked to boil the ocean. But what
Right.
we are being asked to do is what we can with what we have where we are. That right there will gather that 3.5% that Christine was talking about earlier. That's what's going to shift attitudes and behaviors, and dare I say, consciousness.
Mm,
Dare. Dare to.
there. I love that.
Yes. So important. I love what you said in our talk before, Diane. You said one person has a lot of power. You know, what I always tell my authors and the narrators when they start is how Women Connected in Wisdom and Connected in Wisdom Press is like a dream come true, right? Going into middle school and high school, my teachers always had these, little surveys you fill out in class or question, let's say questionnaires. I guess surveys is like a business term, right? But questionnaires for the students and a question that my teachers were really good at asking is, do you feel like you can make a difference? And I always felt like I could, right? I
Mm-hmm.
know that I, with God, can do a lot, right? But
Mm-hmm.
me, with, and not that I need more than God, but me and other people can do
Mm-hmm.
a lot more. So I
Mm-hmm.
love that you empower ladies, women, and people in general to use their voice. It reminds me of another friend. She talks about your voice being like a flower, so when you are supporting your clients and finding their voice, how do you walk them through that smoothed, quieted um, place to being empowered in their voice?
It depends. Each client is different, and it really depends on the place that they're coming from and what it is that they want. And it's across the board. I need to give a keynote. I have to say something
Mhm,
about myself. I'm
mhm,
putting together my website, and I have to say something about myself.
mhm.
Or I'm in a business, and I run a department, and there's a new project that's being rolled out, and I have to get everybody behind me. So it depends on, or it's communication skills. An awful lot of the time, it starts with that. I have to give a speech. I hate speaking. And public speaking is probably the number one thing that we hate in the world. Snakes is second.
Right.
So it
Wow.
depends on, it's, yeah, but it depends on what the client, what the woman is asking for. But it all comes back to the same thing because at the heart of it, at the heart of it, we are learning how to tell a heartfelt story artfully. And so, what I want to do is find out, what are your goals? What are your goals? What's your vision? What are you after? If you were a character in a story, what is it that you want to go out and get? And we were talking about Dorothy and the red shoes and the Wizard of Oz. Well, what did each of them want? Bravery and, well, whatever the rest was. What do you want? So, as a character, what do you want? What are you willing to do to get what you want? What are the consequences of doing that and getting what you want? If you get it, then what? And if you don't get it, then what? So it's easy to start out by putting the client in a third person place, in a neutral place, so that the oh my goodness, I part doesn't have to show up right away. But if you can start thinking about yourself as a character in a story, every one of us has a story that I imagine is coming to mind right away, whether it's Pippi Longstocking or The Wizard of Oz or whatever. We've all got a story where there was a heroine in there who wanted something, who knew what she wanted, maybe, and who had to make choices, accept the consequences of those choices. And if she failed or if she didn't fail, then what? And so, in the course of putting that little story together, which is pretty much universal across the board of my clients, then we can start to pull out, okay, what needs to be worked on here? And if it is the fear of saying the story, then how do we work on that? And so when I taught story, I've taught story for 30 years. What I've always said is we are learning how to deliver a heartfelt story artfully told, meaning whatever we say has to come from here. We're not reciting, we are telling something that comes from here. And we have to learn to do it artfully. There's an art and a science to story. Also, put down the paper, nobody gets hurt. And then we stand and deliver. And see, I think that's the biggest challenge, putting down the paper and nobody gets hurt. But you realize you do it and you can do it. So, and that's kind of so it's individual goals, needs, wants, but we all start pretty much from the same place, the story format, and then individualize it from there, and then get to the heart of what it is. How are you going to deliver that heartfelt story in an artful way so that you put down your paper and nobody gets hurt and folks jump out of their socks when you're done speaking?
Right. I love that folks jump out of their socks when you get done speaking. We were talking ahead of the show about a couple of those folks that you wanted to share with our audience, women who have made a difference. You want to tell us who's been inspiring you lately with their stories? And
there are two. One is quick because I just came across it and it's a man. But the movie that was based on his life, which is true, is called One Life. And he was a British stockbroker. He was in his 20s and he happened to go to Czechoslovakia as the Nazis were occupying it. And he saw the plight of the children. And he wanted to get the children out of Czechoslovakia to England on the Kinder transports. And everyone told him, this is ridiculous. This isn't going to work. This needs $1 million, blah, 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 blah. And he said, well, we'll just have to figure it out. And he managed to rescue 669 children. And those 669 children gave rise to 6,000 people who were born as a result of those children being saved. And what's remarkable about this story is that for 50 years, no one knew about what he had done, he and others, until his wife came across a scrapbook in their attic and said, WTF is this? And then it came to light. And when he was asked about how come, why did he do this? He said, well, I happened to be in the right place at the right time with some luck and some compassion.
Wow.
So that story.
What's his name?
It's
Sir
Nicholas Winton.
Yeah.
He was knighted by Queen Elizabeth. Yeah, he lived to 103, I believe. So he's got a wonderful website out there. There's wonderful videos of him. But that one person having an idea, having a vision, and being able to pull together with other people, because we always do it in concert. We don't do anything alone. He was able to do this. Yeah. So do we have time for me to talk about Doris?
Yes, please.
Absolutely. Talk about Doris, and I also want to talk about Reverend Buddy. So let's talk about both.
Yes, the soapbox is yours.
Look at this face. Isn't that gorgeous? This is
so for our listeners that are listening, Diane is holding up a book. Will you hold it up again for me?
Yes, let's read the title of it too.
This is talking about Granny D walking across America. Hold it up a little higher for me. In my 90th year.
So imagine.
Tell us about Granny D.
I know, I just love her to death. So imagine you're 88 years old. You've been taking care of your husband for the last 10 years with Alzheimer's, and he finally passes away. And your friend of 50 years also dies, leaving you her gardening hat. And you've got arthritis, and you've got emphysema, and you live in New Hampshire, and you're wondering, W2F, what do I do with my life now? And her son said, "What matters to you?" Now, keep in mind, this is back in 1999.
Mm.
And the McCain-Feingold Campaign Finance Reform Bill, way before Citizens United, was up. And she said, "You know what? That's important to me because we've got corporations who are buying the democracy of the people. They're buying the voice of the people. And that really matters to me." And her son says, "Well, what do you want to do about that?" She says, "Well, I'm going to walk across America and I'm going to tell people." So for the next 7 months, she walks, she's 5 foot tall, little tiny thing. She starts walking 2 miles, 5 miles. Every day she's walking 10 miles. And then she puts on a 25-pound pack. She's 88, going to be 89. And she's walking, and she does this for 7 months. And she says to her son, "Okay, I think I'm ready." And they fly to California, and they really don't have a plan in mind. The idea was that she was going to walk and hopefully sleep in churches and meet up with other people along the way and explain to them
Wow.
what she was doing. Hmm.
Mm.
And she did. She walked across America. She went from 89 to 90. She was 89 by the time she started. She got into her 90th year, and it took her 14 months to walk from California to Washington, D.C. And when she got to Washington, D.C., the blizzard was so heavy that she had to cross country ski to the Capitol to meet Senators
Wow.
Feingold and McCain. Yes, it was incredible. And by this time now, her emphysema is gone. She'd been a heavy smoker all of her life. Her emphysema is gone. And when I look at her face, so I read her book. I have her New York Times obituary taped in the cover. I had letters. I have a packet of letters back and forth with her because I went to college in New Hampshire, and there's something about that New England spirit. And I pulled this book off of my shelf a couple of months ago, and it's been sitting to the side of my computer. And I keep looking at that face, and I keep wondering, what is it? What is it, Doris, that you're asking me to do? I don't know. I don't know. But I keep looking at that face and thinking, if you can do that 10 miles a day, every day, and bring attention to what you brought attention to. And here we are, 25 years later,
Right.
and the political situation with campaign finance reform is multiple times worse than
Mm.
it was then. But if you read her story, and the fellow who co-authored this with her basically took her journal, the journal that she was keeping every day, and he converted that into a more readable form of book. So you're reading her words, as she's going from place to place and getting people to understand. And it comes down to the same thing. It's the golden rule. And the people with the gold make the rules. And
Mm.
the more money they have, the louder their voice and the more influence they have, leaving us with less money and less voice and less influence. We're seeing that right now. We're seeing that absolutely right now. And so it's no accident to me that she fell off my bookshelf. And again, I don't know what she's asking me to do, but I'm a big believer in signs. So we'll see.
Mm. I
Yeah.
can't wait to read her book and hear her story. I had not heard her name before, Diane. So thank you for lifting up her voice and her work. And I'm going
Yes.
to put a link to it in our show notes. And
Thank you.
what an incredible human.
Yeah, what comes up for me when you say, like, "What is she asking you?" Of course, I think that's a continued conversation between the 2 of you, right? But what I see is keep going. You've walked these miles you just did as a nurse attorney to litigation consultant, right, to story
Mhm,
guide, and this is
mhm,
very important, um,
mhm,
work and skills that people need, especially right now, because I definitely can speak to the physical changes when what you want to say it smored, when you feel like there's no room for it, when there's no verbiage for it or space to be heard or understood. So I would love to go to your experience as a nurse attorney, how do you feel like that's helped you and shaped the way that you think about origin stories and storytelling right now?
Wow, great question. So as a nurse, and I was a pediatric nurse throughout, from my Navy days until the time I went into business. As a nurse, you're really listening to the story of the patient, especially with children, and you've got to use different listening skills than you would with an adult. And in the Navy, uh, the husbands were usually deployed, and so the moms were there holding up the roof for the kids. And so you're listening to them and
Right.
their story. And oftentimes that's all anybody wants. I mean,
Mhm.
how often would you just listen to me? Oftentimes that's it. People just want to be heard. And so if I could remember to sit on my tongue and ask myself, does it need to be said? Does it need to be said now? Does it need to be said by me? No, no, no. And shut up and listen. That that was probably the starting point. And then when I became a litigator, it was the same thing, listening to what happened to the plaintiff. How did someone else's negligence change their lives, change their family, change fill in the blank? And then as a litigation consultant, I took those skills because lawyers are very left brain, A plus B plus C equals whatever, just the facts, ma'am, only the facts. And oftentimes, what I was teaching them was how to listen the story out of their client. Like you're a midwife, a story doula, you're listening it out of a person. And what's important about that is you're not always going to win at trial. Trials are really, really difficult places to succeed as a plaintiff because people are thinking it's jackpot justice, or if you'd only done this or that or the other thing differently.
Right.
And so listening that story out of people so that even if they don't prevail at a trial, gives them the sense at least my story was heard. It wasn't wasted.
Mhm.
And maybe
Yes.
this will help somebody else. So
Mhm.
at each turn of the clock in my life, there has been some next thing that's taken advantage of what I've learned before. As I'm sure Shannon, you and Christine know
Yes.
well. None of this
Transferable
stuff is.
skills.
It is.
Wasted. No, I love it.
Mm-hmm. It is. And and the reason why all of this is important now is because someone was saying earlier today on Substack, well, I'm blue and you're red, and never the twain shall meet. Well, yeah, there is a lot of division in this country. But as Granny D kept pointing out as she walked along, she says, all anybody wanted to do was tell their story of how moneyed people kept them away from something. So they couldn't get prescription drugs at a good cost. There was always walls being built up. And so she was listening these stories out. And so today, I think one of our goals would be not not to capitalize on the this versus the that, but to find common ground. Could could you make room for the notion that we're we have the right to eat food that's safe? Could you make room for the notion that we should be able to afford our medicines? Can you make room for the notion that children should be able to go to school without feeling they'll be shot in recess? I mean, you could go on and on and on, but you're asking the other person, could you make room for the notion that, and you're finding common ground around a theme or a value, safety, health, education, whatever. And then as you're listening that answer out of them, and this is what I learned in focus groups, we're not asking for, do you agree or disagree? Because those two words right away are divisive. But if you were to say, are you same or different? I know somebody who feels that. Are you same or different? I have a family member who. Are you same or different? And now what we're doing is we're building the stories on common ground, because that is what is still like your mycelium, Shannon, your mushrooms, and they do that. Mycelium goes on for miles.
Mm,
Like the mycelium, that is where we are building the connections, because at the
Mhm.
end of the day, we are more alike than not alike. And I
right.
take it all the way back and say, that's why
Mhm,
sharing our stories is so important, so that
mm,
someone says, what? You too? I
right.
thought I was the only one.
Mhm,
Mm-mm.
Mhm. Mm. And it is powerful, that power of story and connection. I
Yeah, it's
love
it.
that.
We're just story beasts, from the very beginning. And the thing about story too is that it's been shown, proven, whatever,
mhm,
that when we hear those words, once upon a time, everything, like the big deep breath that you two took at the beginning of the show before you did your little dance and shook off everything.
yes.
That once upon a time deep breath feeling happens to us big humans as well as it does to little humans.
Mhm,
Blood pressure goes down, pulse goes down, breathing slows. And we're in a place to receive information or ideas or visions in a way that we would not otherwise be able to receive.
mm. What do you think it is about the once upon a time? Does it take you to a neutral place? So maybe let me know if I'm correct. What I see is it takes you to a neutral place. You you don't know about it automatically, right? Because you weren't there for it. This person is telling you a story. But it also creates an openness for you to listen. Is that what it's doing?
Well, surprisingly, you're halfway there.
Okay.
Surprisingly, story works on imagination. And so when I was talking about what? Oh, I know. When I was talking earlier about my voice being smored, my expectation is that both of you, hearing
Mm,
that, went back in your imaginations and ticked on a time when that would have been the same for you, whether in your family, your church, your school, whatever. And then you came back to my story. You didn't lose it. And so that's what connects us, is the imagination. Because what we're tapping into are the sensations, the feelings, the memories, the experiences of the listener. And that is why story is connected. It's an inter-R between the story itself, which is organic, and the teller and the listener. It all works together. And so we are building the story in a sense by using all of those elements that then feed into the imagination of the listener. And that's why stories can be bad. I mean, the Nazi story, that was a story, that was a narrative. Jews are bad, we're good. So stories can be evil and evil intended. I I I mean, I recognize that. But it's always working on the imagination of people, the fears of people, the thoughts of
mm,
people. And so our job is to elevate,
yes.
Mhm.
to elevate.
Mhm.
So, can we talk more about origin stories
Mhm.
from how you got from there to here and how you help your clients with that? What does that look like?
Origin stories are so cool because they are all about our who. So Simon Sinek says your why is really important, and your why is important.
Right.
But if you don't know who you are
Mhm,
before you jump into your why, it's like trying to put on Cinderella's glass slipper. It won't fit.
mhm, mhm,
So the who part of you goes back in time. I like to find 7-year-old time, whenever that a good time in your life was when you were young and you had everything ahead of you and you acted on what today you would call values, but back then you didn't know that so much. So we're going back in time to a place where you felt solid, where you felt secure, and we start to tease out the things that mattered to you then. Who were you? What did you want to be? It's like doing an archaeological dig and you're looking for the shards of pottery and the things in the dust, whatnot, that you've not that have never left your life, but they've been perhaps smored. You've put them aside because you haven't been able to keep them in the forefront. So what I'm looking for is the foundation of who you are. And how does that show up in your values? So we said earlier, my key three are adventure, justice, and self-expression. And
Yes.
I could talk till the cows came home about how they show up in my life. But
Mm,
once I can identify that with a client, and it's easy, but going back to a story, then what she does as her why, or what she wants to do as her why, makes more sense. And so if I have a client who's at the crossroads, and that happens a lot, I'm at the crossroads of my life, I'm at the crossroads of my job, this isn't fitting, how come it's not fitting? Your foot's in the wrong shoe. So let's go back to who you are. What do you stand for? What wouldn't you ever stand for? What shows up in your life as being important? What was happy? What was engaging? What was bitter? And how does that begin to craft a who? One quick example, I have a colleague who was putting together a website. And what she zeroed in on was a time in grammar school when she was very successful. She and another boy, I think, didn't have any absences for the whole year. And so they were given the prize of a book. And the boy got books on sailing and I think horses and something else. And she got something on sewing, something on cooking. It was very divisional. And when we looked at that starting place, and she didn't speak up because who would? We wouldn't necessarily. When you look at that starting place, it began to inform the way in which her life had taken place in the corporate world. And we started to uncover who was important to her in the corporate world, what were the breaks that she got as a girl, as a woman, who did she remember, why did she remember them. Aspects of her life blossomed like that flower that she hadn't considered before. She hadn't put two and two together before. And so that's all we're looking for is connections. Who was I? Who
Mm-hmm.
was I? So today I could say I'm the girl with the grandmother face, but I don't have grandkids, so I'm still middle aged.
mm.
Does that
And
answer your
just
question, Shannon?
it does, absolutely, and just like you were talking about her face, yours is beautiful, and it
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
reflects your
look.
story. Alright, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
I love it, and I have another question, and Christine, of course, we have space for you, right? And I know we need to do wisdom in action. What you just said, though, Diane, reminded me of this last question I have for you with the different versions of ourselves, right? One of our authors in Volume 2, Women Connecting Wisdom Volume 2, is in Alexandria, Egypt. And we actually recorded this Sunday. It'll be coming out in a few weeks, though. But she talks about the moons of her life, right? The three
Mm,
moons of J
mhm,
is what it's called.
mhm.
So your quarter moon story arcs, the quarter moon really stood out to me. Can you talk about your consulting at the quarter moon story arts and why that name was so important to you?
Great question. There's a
Thank you.
song by a female singer, Kathy Matee, out of the South, and she has, I see Christine's nodding, and she's got a song, the chorus of which is quarter moon's better than none when you travel the night road, and a quarter moon's better than none when you carry a light load. And I've always I love her and her songs, but that
Mhm,
spoke to me. And so that's what the quarter moon is all about, that there's just a little glimmer. You know where you're going. You might not think you do, but you know where you're going. You know the words you want to use. You just need somebody to listen them out of you. So that's what the quarter moon is. And I love lighthouses. Just love, love, love
me too.
lighthouses. And
Mhm,
many people do. Here on Whidbey Island, we have Admiralty Head Lighthouse. I've talked about it
mhm,
before. But to me, a lighthouse signals a beacon in the night.
mhm,
For sailors at sea, it says
mhm,
safety. It says
mhm,
somebody is here. It cautions you away from rocks and dangerous places. And so, as a story guide, that's how I see myself as the
mhm,
lighthouse to shine a little bit of light into your story, to caution you away from where you might be headed. That's not so good. But
mhm,
more importantly, to open up. to shine big light on the story that you are. So I just, and because I'm on an island where we have a plethora of artists, I just wanted to throw the word arts in there. That story
Mhm.
is an art as well as a science. So the work that I do at Quarter Moon Story Arts is exactly what we've been talking about, is helping women clarify their visions, express their voice, express their power, shape their story, and get it out there.
Mhm.
Mm. Thank you, Diane, for that work in the world.
Yes.
Woodby Island is full of artists. Some of them are friends of mine
Mm.
with
Ooh,
Interplay Seattle. We have a strong interplay community out in that area. And I love that part of the world. It is
Mhm.
well, the door's
really
always
stunning.
open.
Thank
Door is
you.
always open.
I might be out there this fall. I would love
Mhm.
to meet
Okay.
you in person. That would be
All
Mhm.
right.
completely fun.
So, Diane, this is something that we do every week. Ask our guest experts, and we answer ourselves what we're doing intentionally for that dimension of wellness. So, for your wisdom in action, what are you working on for yourself?
For my wellness.
In social wellness, yes. Yes, we see you, Tamara, saying, I am an artist. Yes.
Uh, um, it's a couple of things. I
Okay.
don't have a TV. I haven't had one since 2004.
Okay.
But on the internet, um, the day after I listened to Jimmy Kimmel and
Mm.
Seth Meyer and Stephen Colbert, the talk show hosts, because I think they're hysterical.
Hmm.
So any chance that I can get to laugh at something, I love the BBC. So I'm looking at laughable stuff. Um, music, you mentioned music earlier. Uh, just putting something old on, something from the 70s,
Mm-hmm.
and just dancing in the house, that's important. And then being outside, even if it's a rainy day and all I get to do is step out on the porch and breathe deep,
Mm-hmm.
that's important. But the way I start my day, and I'm up about 4:30 or 5 just because the lights go on outside then. But
Mm-hmm.
I do two things. I don't know if you remember Pluto the dog
Yes.
out of Canada from COVID. I
Mm-hmm.
have a small book of her sayings and pictures. And so I open it up and I read one saying from Pluto and I see her picture. And then I
Mm-hmm.
make my coffee and I sit out on the front porch. It's a wide open farmhouse porch. And I sit there and I greet the day. Never seen
Mm-hmm.
you before.
Right.
Bring it. Give me health and strength. I'll take care of the rest. That's how I
Mm-hmm.
start the day, and the rest, a little music, a little laughter. But I will confess that yesterday I dove into a bag of Cheetos.
Mm-hmm. That's okay. It's a safe place. Yes, and if they spark joy, they're welcome on the soapbox, okay? Cheetos can come up on the soapbox. Yes.
Yeah. First
Yes.
bag in 6 months, but you know what?
Yes.
Eat it
Good
with
job.
joy.
Yes. No, really. What about you, Christine? You wanna go next? You want me to go next?
You go next. I'll wrap us up.
Mm. I love what you said, Diane, about the lighthouses. You know, and what I would say for wisdom in action is, well, this is what I have, let's say it. Find your lighthouse, right? Again, the coffee and chat that I mentioned earlier is like talking about finding connections in teams where I'm supported, right? So social, when we talk about social
Mhm,
wellness, being
mhm,
seen, right? We listen and we
mhm,
don't judge, right? That's important for a lighthouse. Being heard, being understood, being reflected back to, well, Shannon,
mhm,
absolutely,
mhm,
this is fair, but also this, and this you've are always worked on. Like you said, a lighthouse shows that somebody's here, somebody's waiting, it has a signal on for you. I think
mhm,
that
mhm,
is instrumental in social wellness. So
mhm,
um,
mhm,
that's what I
mhm.
say. I definitely have lighthouses, and in difficult social situations, that's what I look for. So that's my wisdom in action. What about
I
yours,
like that.
Christine? Thank
Mm.
you.
Well, just talking about story, what really
Mm,
came up for me is my friend Loika, who is one of my interplay friends, and he's in Texas. And
mm,
he always says, when we're getting back together, he says, let's get together and talk story. And
mm,
so, as we were talking today, Diane, I think my wisdom in action is to talk story.
Mhm.
because I'm a storyteller and it's part of my practice with interplay, and it's part of my just work in the world. And just, I think we need more of that. I think we need more talking story, and I think we need more listening. So I think
Mhm.
mine would be both. I think I
Mhm.
would have both talk story
I
and
love it.
listen.
And I love what you said too, Diane, about active listening. It made me wanna look up listening skills, you know? So, yes, I'll say active listening too.
Yeah.
Mm,
People like us do things like this, or I should say, women like us do things like this. So
right.
Yes.
be
And
part of that
Tamara,
3.5%.
Right?
I want to
Yeah.
give a shout out to Tamara, who's been listening this whole time. And
Mhm.
put your wisdom in action if you want to in the comments, Tamara, and we'll lift that up. Like,
Yeah.
what are you working on social wellness this week? And it
Mhm.
may have been the she said earlier, we listen and we don't judge. I love that, and I love
Mhm.
all the I don't know if you've seen that, Diane, on socials. There's a whole thing, a whole thread about that going on. We listen
Really?
and we don't judge. Oh yeah, it's
Mm.
hysterical. There's this one dad
Mhm.
I follow who has
Yeah.
3 girls, and
Mhm.
it's pretty funny. It's really awesome. So,
Mm. Beautiful.
Diane, thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you
Yes.
for your wisdom. Thank you for being connected. And we are so grateful for your work in the world. We are going to put how people can connect with you in our show notes. But do you want to tell folks how they can connect with you?
Oh, it's easy. Quartermoonstoryarts.net is the website. I can find you can find me there. My podcast is called Stories from Women Who Walk. It is on every single platform going, including Pandora Radio, and we celebrate 5 years April 1. And then
Yes.
Substack, I have a new account there. Right now, it's called Wyzga on Words. Everything is free. I will shift it over to Quarter Moon Story Arts to consolidate it with my practice. But those are the three best places to get a hold of me. I still have a little presence on LinkedIn, but I gave you the top three.
Thank
Beautiful.
you so much, Diane. Thank you for being with us today. And thank you for telling your stories and
Mhm.
other women's stories. Really, really grateful for you.
Thank you.
Yes.
This has been really nourishing.
Mm.
Mm,
Thank you for that. Yes, so glad you could join us.
mm,
We always say it's gonna be a
yum.
good conversation. It's always a
Oh,
good
I
conversation.
knew that was a great conversation.
I know.
So exciting. It's
Yes.
good when we look up and the hour's gone. And we're like,
Easy.
whoa, what
And
happened there?
Christine's good at keeping us on track. Okay, we're getting the time. I'm like, let it go. Like, let it go. And Diane's episodes are good, y'all. I did follow her on for the podcast on Spotify. 2 minutes, 6 minutes.
Mm,
The 6 minutes are the long ones. So she has over 1,000 episodes. You have plenty of content to go through if you like her different prompts and different days and stuff. You'll see what I'm talking about. But such
I
a
also
pleasure.
had about 20 people that popped in my head I need to connect her with.
Yeah.
So,
It's gonna
that's
be
how my
great.
brain works. I was like,
That's why
oh,
we're
I got
here.
to connect her to this
Yeah.
person and this person. And I
Yeah.
know a lot of women who walk. So,
That's what I was thinking. All of our walking groups and stuff, I always think about you ladies when I go. And when I'm building these adventure lists, I'm like, I need to reach out to the ladies, see which parks we should be going to.
right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, friend, I want to give a shout out before we go.
Please.
We have talked about it. You mentioned it about our book. We are
Mm.
currently gathering authors for book 3.
Yes, we are.
Women Connect in Wisdom, Stories and Resources Rooted in the 8 Dimensions of Wellness, Volume 3.
Mhm.
We are looking for authors who want to talk about those different dimensions and be a part of uplifting your story. It is a part of our mission and work that we do in the world.
Mm.
And we have a lot of fun while we're doing it.
Yeah, we
So
do.
if you have always wanted to be an author, if you are someone who's like, I want to do that, but I don't know how,
Right.
we hold your hand through it,
Mhm.
and we dance and we play and we have a good time, and we connect you to other amazing women and authors and storytellers. And we also teach you how to be a speaker.
Mhm.
So it is kind of an all inclusive package.
Yes, it is.
So kind of fun. So let
Yeah.
us know, reach out to us
Mhm.
at Women Connected in Wisdom podcast at gmail.com, or CW Press at Women Connected in Wisdom. And we'll put that link in our show notes, and find out how you can become involved. Or if you have somebody else that you want to sponsor, we
Yes.
have a lot of women who have powerful stories. that the
Mm.
world needs to know about. I was so excited to hear about Granny D. I'd never
Mm.
heard that story. I can't wait to
Right.
read that book. Like
Mhm.
that's
California to
incredible.
Washington, DC is in, and then, skiing in, literally,
Right?
like, the day after
Like,
tomorrow. We kept saying that, "Day after tomorrow," just
oh
like
my
that movie,
gosh.
right?
She would have been a woman connected to wisdom. Like her
She
and
was
Sheila have
one.
been dancing together, right?
That's
And
what it
connected
is.
to us through Diane,
Yep,
right?
yep.
So powerful.
That's how it
So very
happens.
powerful.
Yes. Yes, y'all. So looking forward to seeing you connected to the book, seeing you connected to these downloads of the episodes and connected to Diane's resources. We will be back live at 5 next week for episode 188. In the meantime, be well, be wise, be whole. Peace.